Welcome to Unveiling Death. I am Rabbi Jeffrey Weil. Who they loved and who loved them. Observations of a geriatric care manager with Elline Eliasoff. Elline Eliasoff is a gerontologist and clinical exercise physiologist with decades of experience in aging care. Elline began her career in the Veterans Administration, and then she launched Elite Rehabilitation and Care Management, her own subacute care practice. She has a master's in gerontology and a certificate in patient advocacy. Elline is a certified care manager. Check out her website, EllineEliasoff.com. Elline Eliasoff, thank you so much for being on Unveiling Death.
Thank you for having me.
You are an aging life care manager, a gerontologist. You encounter people professionally at final stages, I guess, typically of their lives. What are their typical common concerns at that stage of their lives?
Well, there's a lot of them. Part of it is, will their family be okay without them? Is their paperwork in order? And also, they don't want people don't want to suffer. I had a client tell me recently that she felt that death was humiliating, and one of her concerns was she wanted to make sure that she wasn't humiliated and people didn't see her at her worst during the process. Like, she didn't want a ton of visitors. She just felt like sickness and death and being in the hospital was humiliating. That was her word.
Right. So as a gerontologist or geriatric aging life care manager, how would you respond to that, both like at the moment and then in your ongoing relationship with that person? How do you make sickness, aging, nearing death, and death, in a sense, less humiliating?
That's a good question. One of the things is I let people dictate what they want. So for this woman who passed, I think in December, she didn't want a lot of visitors. So I respected that. I also made sure that she had enough care around her. So for her, money wasn't an issue. So I made sure the people around her always had her dressed well. Her hair was always done. We put lipstick on her. So she always looked good because that was important to her. And I made sure she was never uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she had some significant neurological events, she was always sitting up in a chair and she was always propped up to look beautiful. So, but, it is an acceptance. At times you lose control of bowel and bladder, and people do have to help you with that. And I think that was what she was referring to her to. And there's nothing I can do to change that. All I can do is make sure that the people who take care of her respect that. And for the most part, people do.
Right. But do you think that she, the issue of acceptance is just acceptance of just such a dramatic change of one's everything, literally one's everything, and including and perhaps most essentially their self-perception, which is so difficult. So did she come to that point? We'll use her as a kind of a case study. Did she come to that point of acceptance? And in that case, would the concern about humiliation be less acute if one accepts this is just how it is at this stage?
I think so. She was a little bit of a different story. She was young, and so young for me is someone in their 70s. And in her particular case, she kept having strokes, one after another, and they couldn't figure out why. So with every event she had, she lost more and more of her ability to talk and to communicate with me. I think, by the end, she just was done. And at that point, she wouldn't let me feed her. She wouldn't take fluids. Like, she made a very volitional decision that she was done. And so what we do is just get her, of course, she was on hospice, and we keep her really comfortable. And so she's not in pain. She's not uncomfortable. She looked like she was sleeping, up until the very end. But I do think when people get to the point where they know that their death is very near, they do accept it. And I mean, I'm thinking about actually one of your congregants, and at the end of his life, he called me to say, "Look, I've made this decision to discontinue my medication. I'm going to go on hospice. What I need to know from you is that promise me you will do everything you can to take care of my wife.
Right.
Do not leave my wife."
Right.
So that was his deathbed wish, was that she was cared for.
Right. Hmm. Do people express to you much a fear of their own deaths? Like, what will I experience? This is what will I encounter? What will the process of actually dying be like? Do you get that much?
No. But you know what? I always equate it to like having a baby, because you're pregnant and you're so uncomfortable at the end. And, you spend your whole pregnancy wondering how this labor and delivery is going to go. And it's scary, it's terrifying. But then at the point in which you're in labor and you're so uncomfortable, and you actually don't worry about that anymore. You just want it over. Like you want the whole thing over. And I think that's kind of what happens. I mean, even my own father was terrified of dying. And by the time we put him on hospice, and he resigned himself. He was okay. He wanted out. He was
Mhm.
in too much pain.
Right.
So I think he was looking forward to it. I mean, he was not looking forward to leaving us, but he was looking forward to not being in pain anymore.
Right. Right. I'm curious, have you encountered people, I know that you said does not happen too much. Have you encountered anyone who's like, "I can't wait to see what's on the other side"? Have you heard that?
Yes. So I have a woman who's about to turn 100.
Mhm.
Um, and all of her peers are gone. Her husband's gone. She's got a lovely family, and they visit, and she's got lovely caregivers who take care of her, but she's she's done. I mean, she's like, I don't know why I'm still here. I'm just a burden to everyone, and I don't have any quality of life. Like, my life revolves around this house and what time I shower and what time I have lunch. And she's like, I'm so ready to see all my friends, and it's my turn. Why isn't it my turn? Why am I still here?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
she's very much looking forward to, you know, connecting with her loved ones and her sister and her husband. And yeah.
Right. Wow. Wow. What do you wish people understood differently as they or better as they age? What do you want them to what do you want them to get and be thinking about and contemplating that they are typically not getting?
That's such a good question. There's a couple things that people have to think about. And I think with our generation, people are just living longer and longer and longer. And we can keep someone alive a ridiculous amount of time. So what's important is that people sit down and they really understand what life looks like for them, what they want. Because I can preserve your body, but medical science can't necessarily preserve your brain. So is that how you want to live? So it's really important to sort of soul search a little bit and decide where your cutoff point is and how long you want to stay in your body. Because at some level, it could become your choice. And then the other thing is, because we're living so long, people really have to protect, you know, this beautiful body that God gave them. So, like, you have to take care of your teeth, and you have to drink lots of water and not eat a lot of processed and garbage food, and exercise. And um, you have to sort of gear up to live to
Mhm.
be 100, because there's a high likelihood you will.
Right. That's amazing. Right. So there's not a point at like, one can't say, listen, I'm blank years old. I'm just going to start eating, Charleston chews and just like tons of $100,000 bars and feeling like terribly doing it. But I've wanted to do this for years. I've wanted to eat this crap food and now I'm going to do it because the fact of the matter is they might feel really crummy for the next 15 or 20 years.
Well, right, and your body needs proper nutrition, and But I also think, like, if you want the Charleston chew, I'll be the first to tell you to have the Charleston chew. Like, life should be enjoyed, but
Yeah, if it's
everything in
very, very
moderation.
for people with dentures, I think it'd be very difficult
It's
because they're
very
very,
sticky.
very, very chewy. Do they still exist, Charleston chews?
I have no idea.
Somebody out there, Google that. What are the messages you are conveying to people? I mean, I understand that you want people to be prepared. Um, you want their affairs to be in order. But what are the other messages you find yourself conveying to folks as they are preparing for their final days?
What I more than giving messages, I receive, like, I want them to tell me what they want, and so that I can carry things out to their wishes. Um, and it is, it is a natural process. We're all going to do it. I mean, I really want people to tell me what they want. And what's important to me as a aging life care manager, a gerontologist, geriatric care manager, is that people have their power of attorney for healthcare, their power of attorney for property and finance, their advanced directives. Like, do you want a feeding tube? Do you want to be intubated? Um, do you want your heart started if it stops? Like, at what level do you want us to stop intervening? And that becomes hugely important. I'll give an example. I have a woman now who was a Holocaust survivor, and she, I think her younger years were spent sleeping out in the woods, Siberia,
Mm.
like for 2 years. Her father died of pneumonia. She and her sister and her mother were liberated to a displaced persons camp, where she met her husband, who was an Auschwitz survivor. Her husband dropped dead of a heart attack in his early 50s. And she never, right? She never really knew to communicate to her sons what she wanted. So fast forward, she raised the boys pretty much from high school on by herself. She ran the family business. Both boys tremendously successful, great guys, but she wound up with neurocognitive decline, so some form of dementia. And she never told the boys what she wanted. So the boys intervened and intervened and intervened. So now she's got late stage dementia. She's got a feeding tube. She's on oxygen, and they just keep pumping her full of medicine into this feeding tube. She really doesn't get out of bed. She doesn't walk. She doesn't talk. Most of her nutrition, all of her nutrition is coming through in this tube. And, as someone who's been consulting with these sons, adult sons, my age, I'm like, do not put the feeding tube in. And they're like, well, my mom never said what she wanted. It's like, she's got dementia. Do not put the feeding tube in.
Mhm.
What are you preserving? I mean, it breaks my heart because it wouldn't be what I want. It wouldn't be what I would do for someone I love, but it's not my choice. I just have to respect their choice.
Right, but are you that direct when you said when you were did you actually say do not pursue this to them? When you say that to
Yes,
them, are you that direct?
I'm that direct.
Even though you don't know what the woman would have wanted or not.
Right. But at the point in which you have end stage dementia, what happens more often than not is that you start aspirating your food. So the mechanism that controls what goes down your lungs and what goes into your stomach doesn't work anymore. So food's going into your lungs.
Mhm.
So when I see aspiration pneumonia 2 or 3 times in a row, that's engine failure. That's like your car has engine failure. And when your car has engine failure, you there's nothing you can do to fix it. So I feel like that's the body's way of saying I can't do this anymore. But we can continue to pump antibiotics into people. We can do it IV, we can do it through a feeding tube. But at some point they're just going to aspirate their own saliva. Like, it's so you're not preserving a quality that anybody I would think would want.
Mhm.
And
Right.
in all my years of doing this, I've only met one person who said, I do not want to die. I don't care what you have to do to keep me alive. You keep me alive.
One person in years and many, many, many clients.
Yes. So I look at this poor woman and I feel like her dignity's been stripped. They're going to keep pumping her full of antibiotics and insure and medication right into that feeding tube. And and
And
turning
she
her in
and
bed every
yeah,
2 hours.
and she's not responsive, or is she responsive?
She opens her eyes,
Uh-huh.
but she can't have a conversation.
Yeah, wow. How did a family like this come to you? I mean, she had, I assume that it wasn't she who sought you out. Like, how did they come to you? And that's part of a one piece of a broader question. But what you do is so valuable, and I assume the general American population is not very aware of the field of gerontology and what the help and the assistance, the guidance that someone like you can offer. Is that true? Is that a challenge to your profession?
It is a challenge. I mean, I think people are getting to learn a little bit more, but even the lady who didn't want to be humiliated, um, I her family came to me because they were looking for nursing homes for her because she couldn't stay in her apartment. And it was one of the nursing home administrators that said, "You really need a geriatric care manager to help you." Um, so yeah, people come to me weird in different ways. People like hospital discharge social workers know about us, estate planning attorneys. But most of my referrals, I would say, come from physicians who know me and have worked with me.
Right. I'm curious about, these are realms where people are basically, educated. Maybe they have, they have the means to pay for this. Are folks who don't have those means, communities that don't have those means and that education, is it a field that is sort of not available?
I don't know about other communities. I know that like CJE has a care management arm where the
That's the Council for Jewish Elderly, for those who don't know.
yes, the Council for Jewish Elderly. So they have a care management arm where the prices are really reduced. But
Mhm.
you're right, for underserved people, it's a little bit harder, but everything's harder for them, you know.
True. Okay, that's a fair point. So you encounter individuals, you encounter families at very intense times. I mean, there's like a lot going on, converging at that time. And I'm wondering for you personally, Aline, if this feels intense to you, um, or are you a really good compartmentalizer?
No, I'm a terrible compartmentalizer. It's very intense, and it I mean, these people honestly break my heart. Like, for instance, the lady that we talked about earlier, um, she didn't have any children, and she had one nephew who lived in the city, and he had a family, a young family, and he would come and see her, but I was her person for everything. So for 6 months, I mean, she didn't have an itch that I didn't make sure someone scratched. Um, so at the end of her life, it was interesting. I was at a holiday party, and the caregiver called and said she's suffering. And I happened to have been conveniently located to where she was. And I left the party and went to her. And when I got there, I realized she wasn't suffering at all. She was actively dying. Um, and I called her nephew and said, "Come." And I sat with her and I massaged her, like massaged her neck, massaged her shoulders, rubbed her chest, and I talked to her. I was just talking to her. And as her nephew walked into the room and I said, "He's here, so and so's here, the other so and so is here, the baby's here, you know, I think it's time for you to go. And we love you and we're right here and we're going to stay with you. But you can go." And as I was talking to her, she left. I mean,
Hmm.
and at one point I just realized she wasn't breathing and I couldn't get a pulse on her wrist, which I was holding her hand, and she was gone. And I think that one took me a while. Like that one broke because she was so important and I mean, she was also just so lovely. Anyways, but yeah, I struggled with that one.
Hmm. Um, did you struggle in part also because it seemed like she needed you?
Yeah, she needed me. I mean, I was grateful. that I was there and I was able to get to her. Um, but I also knew that the world lost someone very special in that moment, and um, it was an honor and a privilege to help her transition away.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I mean, she was somebody who I really spent a lot of time with and
Right.
really was very hands on with.
Right.
Um, so, no, I can't. I didn't compartmentalize it at all. Well,
Right.
I
Right.
was pretty wrecked for a couple days.
So that was an unusual situation, obviously. It's a special relationship, special woman, obviously. What about typically for you?
So it depends, because I've done balance and fall prevention and I've worked in seniors' homes doing, I'm a kinesiotherapist before a gerontologist. So I see people for exercise and general conditioning. So when it's one of my clients that I have laid hands on for years, like your congregant, yeah, that one broke me too.
Mhm.
That was very, very challenging. I mean, recently I had a woman come to me and she was on hospice and she was in a nursing home and she was miserable and she wanted to go back to her apartment. And her family called and said, is it possible to get her home? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, give me 2 days, I'll have her home. And in 2 days, I had the hospice company set up the house. I had caregivers there. She was home and she may have lasted, I think, 3 or 4 months, but I wasn't the one taking care of her. I wasn't laying hands. I was just truly overseeing her care, and she was lovely too. Um, but when she passed, I was just grateful that I had given her exactly what she wanted, which was to die at home.
Right. Right. I noticed, Eileen, and if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But you use terms like pass and like she left, and I have not heard you say the word die yet or death. I'm wondering if that's something that you do um, consciously? Do you try to avoid that, or does it reflect a sort of spiritual, or theology or spirituality? I mean, what, and because it's so immediate for you, it's so regular for you. Do you shy away from those words, die and death?
I don't shy away from it. I don't think it exists.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't really think people die. I think they just leave their bodies.
Hmm.
Um, and I truly believe that there's like something else. And I've seen it. I've like, there's so much evidence of it for me. Um, and if you watch people die, they are talking to people that have passed before them. And I just think there's something waiting for us. I don't know what it is. One day I'll find out. Um, hopefully not soon. But I just don't think it's the end.
I learn a lot from the elders in my congregation. Sometimes how I want to live myself, my remaining years, sometimes how I might not want to, like whatever it is, the wisdom they have to share. I mean, everyone has some wisdom to share. And I'm wondering, what have you learned? What general lessons or kind of recurring wisdom have you brought into your mind and heart?
You know what I think? What I've learned is like the trappings don't matter. Um, like you're with people and they have 2 or 3 homes. They only carry Chanel purses. They this, they that. At the end of their life, they don't care about any of it.
Hmm.
What they care about is who they love and who loved them, and sort of how they made the world a better place and what their legacy is. They don't really care about the summer homes or, you know, the jewelry. I think that we're so focused on like superficial stuff and stuff. We're very focused on stuff. And I think at the end of the day, nobody really cares about their stuff. Like I have a client right now that I'm working with, and her husband has dementia and she's got a lot of pulmonary issues. And we're like, really, we're working very hard just to make sure all of her affairs are in order. And she, I'm like, okay, if God forbid, what do you want me to do with all of your jewelry, with all of your beautiful artwork? She's like, I don't care. Keep my jewelry, give it to your kids. It doesn't matter, Elline.
Hmm.
Like, none of that matters. So I think people just like focus on the wrong stuff while they're alive.
So final questions about final moments, Elline. What do people tend to want if they express that, like for their very final moments? Do they want music, certain songs, poetry read, harp music, opera, just someone holding their hand? Like when these conversations come up, what have you heard?
So people, I mean, I think from what I've learned, hearing is the last thing to go. So a lot of people like to have music played, but honestly, as people are transitioning out, typically my clients are on hospice. I'm a big firm believer in hospice, which is a whole nother TED talk another time. But most of the time they're very relaxed and they're not in pain and they're not asking for much other than their family to be around them. Um, and I mean, I think everyone deserves a dignified death, and I think hospice provides that. So I'm a big pusher on making sure that everybody's very, very comfortable. But usually at that point, they're not asking for much,
Right. Just their loved ones.
just their loved ones. That's what's important at the end.
Okay. And that's a great way to end this conversation, which I have greatly, greatly appreciated. Elline Eliasoff, thank you so much for talking to me on Unveiling Death.
And thank you for talking to me as well.
Many thanks to Elline Eliasoff. And thank you, my creative director, my editor, and son, Sammy Weil. Share this episode and follow Unveiling Death. Check out the Unveiling Death podcast playlist on Spotify. Lots of songs. Thank you for listening to Unveiling Death, Eternity in about 24 minutes, every other Monday.